You are listening to HOA Violation Vault. The HOA tried to weaponize a property line. I am standing in my side yard in Grand Rapids, Michigan, holding a ball of string and 2 wooden stakes, and Cynthia Stewart is screaming at me like I just committed a felony. She is the board secretary for the Clearbrook Landing Association, and right now she is holding a portable thermal printer in one hand and jabbing her finger at the ground with the other, telling me that my string line is an unapproved sign and I have exactly 10 minutes to remove it before she issues a fin. I moved to Clearbrook Landing 6 months ago because the neighborhood looked quiet and the commute to my regional field technician routes was manageable. I work on a deadline every single day, installing fiber equipment across 3 counties, and the last thing I needed was an HOA that treated a piece of string like a zoning violation. But here we are. Cynthia is already pulling a blank violation notice out of her printer, and I can see the sweat on her forehead even though it is only 9 in the morning. I do not care what you think, I care what the rule says, she snaps, and she taps the edge of her thermal printer like it is a judge's gavel. The string line is temporary site marking, I tell her, keeping my voice level. I am planning a fence. I filed the application 2 weeks ago. She shakes her head so hard her pink sun hat tips forward. That application is under review, and you do not have approval yet. This, she waves at the string, is an unauthorized structure. I stare at her. It is string. 2 stakes and a piece of string. She does not blink. The covenants say any visible improvement requires pre-approval. This is visible. Remove it now, or I am documenting the violation. I stand up and dust off my hands. I am not removing it. I need the string line to measure the fence run before the contractor arrives this afternoon. She smiles, and it is the kind of smile that makes my stomach drop. Then you are choosing to proceed with an active violation, and I will document that choice. She hits a button on the thermal printer, and a fresh notice starts curling out of the machine. I can make this a lean conversation in 1 email, she says, and she hands me the warm paper. The notice has today's date, my address, and the phrase unauthorized site marking in the description field. The fine is $50, due in 5 business days, with a note that daily penalties will apply if the string line remains. I take the notice and fold it into my back pocket. I have a permit inspection scheduled for this afternoon, and if I miss it, the whole job gets pushed back 2 weeks and I lose the installation window for another client. The stakes stay. Cynthia nods like she expected that answer. Then, we will see you at the next board meeting. She turns and walks back toward the front of the neighborhood, her thermal printer swinging from a strap on her shoulder, and I stand there staring at the string line that is apparently going to cost me $50 a day. My phone buzzes. It is my contractor, asking if the site is clear. I text back yes, but I do not mention the HOA drama because I do not want him to bail. He is a gate vendor technician who also does fence work on the side, and he has been solid so far. His name is Marco, and he is the kind of guy who shows up on time and does not ask a lot of questions. I need that energy today. I walk back inside, grab my backpack with the camera case, and pull out my phone to check the HOA portal. My fence application is still listed as pending, but there is no timeline and no notes. I submitted the drawings, the materials list, and the setback measurements 2 weeks ago, exactly like the guidelines required. Cynthia told me it would take 7 to 10 business days. It has been 14. I call the HOA management company, a place called Ridgeway Property Group that handles about 30 associations in the area. The receptionist puts me on hold for 4 minutes, then transfers me to a compliance coordinator named Angela, who sounds like she is reading from a script. Your application is under review by the Architectural Committee. We will notify you when a decision is made. I ask her if there is a timeline. She says no. I ask her if the string line counts as a structure. She pauses. I would need to review the covenants. I can escalate that question to the board liaison. I tell her the board liaison just fined me for it, and I need clarity now. She says she will send an email to the committee and I should expect a response within 48 hours. I hang up, and I feel the clock ticking. Marco arrives at noon in a white pickup truck with a trailer full of fence panels, posts, bags of concrete mix, and a post hole digger. He is wearing a faded blue work shirt and a baseball cap, and he takes one look at the string line and nods. Good layout. You did the measurements already? I tell him yes, and I do not mention the $50 a day fine that is technically accumulating right now. We start marking the post locations with spray paint, and I am halfway through the third spot when Cynthia comes back. This time she has a clipboard with a clear rain cover and a man in a reflective vest who I have never seen before. The man is holding a laser measuring tool, the same kind I use for site surveys, and Cynthia is pointing at the string line like it is evidence in a murder trial. Marco looks at me. Who is that? I tell him it is the HOA board secretary and some kind of inspector. He frowns. We got permits? I nod. City permits, yes. HOA approval is still pending, but I filed everything on time. Cynthia walks up to the string line and stands right next to it, close enough that her shoe is almost touching one of the stakes. This fence, she says, looking at Marco, is not approved. Any work performed without architectural committee approval is a violation of the covenants and will result in immediate fines and a stop work order. Marco glances at me. I keep my voice calm. I submitted the application 2 weeks ago. I am within the review window. She shakes her head. The review window does not grant you permission to start construction. You must wait for written approval. I pull out my phone and open the HOA app. The guidelines say I can proceed if the committee does not respond within 15 business days. She laughs. Actually laughs. That is not the current policy. The board amended the timeline last month. The new rule is 21 business days, and the amendment was posted in the newsletter. I do not get the newsletter. I opted out because it is 40 pages of font size 8 nonsense about pool schedules and landscaping reminders. Cynthia smiles again. Ignorance of policy updates is not a defense. I look at Marco. He is still holding a post hole digger, and his face says he does not get paid enough for this. The man in the reflective vest steps forward and aims the laser measuring tool at the fence line. Your setback is 4.2 feet from the property line. The covenant requires 5 feet. I stare at him. Who are you? He does not answer. Cynthia does. This is an independent surveyor the board hired to verify compliance. I did not hire him, so he is not independent, I say, and Marco actually grins at that. Cynthia ignores me and writes something on her clipboard. The fence is out of compliance on height, setback, and approval status. You have until end of business today to remove all materials and cease work, or the association will pursue emergency injunctive relief and assess daily fines of $200. $200 a day. My stomach knots. Marco sets down the post hole digger and walks over to his truck without a word. I follow him. He leans against the tailgate and takes off his baseball cap. Man, I do not do HOA drama. If they are going to sue, I am out. I do not blame him, but I also cannot lose this job. I have 3 more installs this week and a materials invoice due Friday. If I let the HOA kill this fence, my reputation in the contractor network is done. I tell Marco to give me an hour. He looks skeptical. 1 hour. Then I am packing up. I nod, and I pull out my phone. I call a friend of mine who works in municipal permitting. His name is David, and he has dealt with HOA overreach before. He answers on the second ring, and I explain the situation in about 90 seconds. He laughs, but it is not a happy laugh. String line as a sign? That is a new one. What does the covenant actually say? I tell him I do not have the covenant in front of me, but Cynthia keeps citing vague language about visible improvements. He tells me to get a copy of the covenant, the amendment she mentioned, and any meeting minutes from the vote that changed the timeline. If they change the rules without proper notice, the amendment is not enforceable. I ask him how I get the minutes. He says they are supposed to be public record for all homeowners. Request them in writing. If they refuse, that is a red flag. I thank him and hang up, and I walk back over to Cynthia. I need a copy of the board meeting minutes from last month. She looks up from her clipboard. Why? Because you said the board amended the approval timeline, and I want to see the vote. She taps her pen against the clipboard. The minutes are available on the HOA portal under the Members Only section. I pull out my phone and open the app. I do not see a minutes section. She sighs like I am wasting her time. You have to log in on a desktop browser. The mobile app does not show document archives. That is absurd, I say, and she shrugs. That is the system. I ask her if she can email me a copy right now. She says no. I ask her why not. She says because the minutes are not finalized until the board secretary reviews them, and that is me, so they are not available yet. I stare at her. You just told me the amendment was posted last month. How is it posted if the minutes are not finalized? She does not answer. She just writes something else on her clipboard and walks away. I go back inside and open my laptop. The HOA portal is a mess of tabs and drop-downs, but I finally find a section labeled Meeting Minutes under the Governance tab. There are 3 files, January, February, March. I open March. It is a PDF, 12 pages long, with every paragraph formatted like a legal filing. I scroll down to the Architectural Committee section. There is a line that says the committee discussed fence applications and agreed to extend the review period to ensure thorough evaluation of materials and placement. No vote count, no amendment language, no mention of 21 days. I screenshot the whole section and text it to David. He replies in under a minute. That is not an amendment. That is a discussion note. If they want to enforce a new timeline, they need a recorded vote and written notice to all homeowners. You are still under the 15-day rule. I feel a flicker of hope, and I forward the screenshot to my email so I have a backup copy. Marco is leaning against his truck with his arms crossed, watching me. I walk over and show him the screenshot. He reads it, then looks at the fence line, then back at me. So we are good? I tell him we are good under the original rule, but the HOA is going to fight it. He shakes his head. I do not want to be in the middle of a lawsuit. I get it, I say, but if we stop now, they win. He thinks about that for a second, then picks up the post hole digger. 1 hour. If they come back with cops or a lawyer, I am gone. I agree, and we get back to work. We dig the first post hole in about 20 minutes. The dirt is dry and packed, and Marco has to use a pry bar to break up the deeper layers. I am mixing concrete when Cynthia comes back a 3rd time, and now she has a tow truck with her. The driver is a big guy in a stained gray shirt, and he is looking at Marco's truck like he is sizing up a meal. Cynthia points at the trailer. That vehicle is parked in violation of the guest parking rules. It needs to be removed immediately. Marco drops the post hole digger and walks over to her. I am parked in his driveway. She shakes her head. The trailer extends past the property line into the common area sidewalk. That is a towable offense. Marco looks at me, and I look at the trailer. It is maybe 6 inches over the edge of the driveway apron, barely touching the grass. This is insane, I say. Cynthia smiles. This is enforcement. The tow driver pulls out a clipboard and starts filling out a form. Marco walks up to him. You are really going to tow my truck? The driver does not look up. Lady says it is authorized. I am just doing my job. Marco turns to Cynthia. You are going to cost me half a day and $200 in towing fees because my trailer is 6 inches onto the grass? She nods. Rules are rules. Marco looks at me, and I can see he is about to walk. I pull out my phone and open the voice recorder app. I hold it up so Cynthia can see it. For the record, you are authorizing a tow of a contractor vehicle that is legally parked in my driveway, with a city permit for the work being performed, because the trailer extends 6 inches past the property line. Is that correct? She stares at the phone. You do not have my permission to record me. I do not need your permission. We are on my property, and Michigan is a one-party consent state. She takes a step back, and I see her jaw tighten. The tow is authorized under Covenant Section 12, Enforcement of Parking and Vehicle Storage. Marco, are you going to move the truck or not? Marco looks at the tow driver, then at Cynthia, then at me. He takes a long breath. I will move it, but I am billing you for the time. He gets in the truck, backs it up 3 feet so the trailer is completely on my driveway, and gets out. Cynthia writes something on her clipboard, says nothing, and walks away. The tow driver shrugs and drives off. Marco stands there shaking his head. Man, I have worked in some nightmare HOAs, but this one is next level. I agree, and we go back to digging post holes. If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe, because I have a lot more HOA nightmares to share. We finished the first 2 post holes by 2 in the afternoon, and I am pouring concrete into the second one when my phone rings. It is the city inspector asking if the site is ready. I tell him yes, and he says he will be there in 15 minutes. I hang up and look at Marco. We need to have at least 3 posts set when he gets here. Marco nods, and we move fast. We get the 3rd hole dug, drop the post in, level it, and pour the concrete just as the inspector pulls up in a white sedan with a city logo on the door. He is a middle-aged guy with a clipboard and a tape measure, and he walks the fence line without saying much. He checks the setback, measures the post height, and makes a note. Everything looks good. You are clear to continue. He signs off on the permit sheet, hands me a copy, and drives away. I feel a wave of relief, and Marco grins. That is what I am talking about. Real permits, real inspectors, not some HOA clipboard warrior. I laugh, and we keep working. By 4 in the afternoon, we have 6 posts set, and the string line is gone because we do not need it anymore. I am cleaning up the tools when Cynthia comes back, and this time she is holding her portable thermal printer and a fresh stack of violation notices. She stops at the edge of my driveway and stares at the fence posts. You proceeded with construction after being ordered to stop. That is a willful violation. The fines are now $400 per day, retroactive to this morning. I hold up the city permit sheet. I have a signed city permit. The inspector was here an hour ago. She does not even look at it. City permits do not override HOA covenants. You are still in violation of the architectural review process. I take a breath and decide to test something. Show me the covenant section that says I have to wait 21 days. She blinks. I already told you. It is in the amended policy. Show me the amendment. Where is the vote? Where is the written notice? She does not answer. I cross my arms. I looked at the March meeting minutes. There is no recorded vote. There is no amendment. You made it up. Her face goes red, and she takes a step forward. I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says. That is the second time she has said that line, and I can feel it settling into my memory like a bookmark. I am going to use that later. She hits the button on her thermal printer, and another violation notice curls out. This one says willful non-compliance. $400 per day, 10-day cure period, lien filing authorized. I take the paper and fold it into my pocket with the first one. I am not paying these. She smiles. Then we will proceed with collections and a lien on your property. I can make this a lien conversation in one email. I nod slowly. Go ahead, try it. She turns and walks away, and Marco watches her go. Dude, she is going to bury you. Maybe, I say, but I did not raise my voice, because my proof was louder than any argument. That night I sit down at my kitchen table with my laptop, a folder full of printed HOA documents, and a notepad. I start building a timeline. I write down every interaction with Cynthia, every violation notice, every threat. I pull up the March meeting minutes again and read them line by line. The section on fence applications is vague, Just a paragraph about discussion and review. No vote, no new rule, no mention of 21 days. I open the HOA Covenant PDF and search for the word fence. It appears in Section 8, Architectural Guidelines. The rule says any fence requires submission of plans to the Architectural Committee, and if the committee does not respond within 15 business days, the application is deemed approved by default. I screenshot that section and add it to my evidence folder. Then I look at the violation notices. The first one is dated today, the second one is dated today. Both cite immediate fines with no cure period, which contradicts the covenant language that says homeowners get 10 days to remedy a violation before fines apply. I screenshot that section too. I call David again. He is at home, and I can hear his kids in the background. I walk him through the timeline and the documents. He listens, then asks me one question. Do you have proof that you submitted the fence application on time? I tell him yes. I have the submission confirmation email from the HOA portal, dated 14 business days ago. He tells me to print it and keep a hard copy. Then he asks me if I have any allies in the neighborhood. I think about that. I have not really met anyone yet. I have been too busy with work. He tells me to find someone, because HOA fights are easier when you are not alone. I thank him and hang up, and I make a note to talk to my neighbors. The next morning, I wake up to an email from the HOA management company. It is from Angela, the compliance coordinator. The subject line says, Architectural Committee Decision. I open it. Your fence application has been denied due to insufficient setback documentation and non-compliant materials. You may resubmit with corrected plans. Please allow 21 business days for review. I read it twice. Then I read it again. My application included a surveyor's plot map with the setback marked, and the materials list matched the approved styles in the covenant guidelines. There is nothing insufficient about it. I reply to the email and ask for specific details on what is missing. Angela replies in 10 minutes. The committee has concluded that additional documentation is required. Please resubmit. I reply again. What additional documentation? She does not respond. I forward the email chain to David. He calls me back in 5 minutes. That is a stall tactic. They denied your application with no real reason, so they can keep fining you while you resubmit. Do not resubmit. You are already approved under the 15-day default rule. I ask him what I should do next. He tells me to send a formal letter to the HOA board, citing the covenant section that allows default approval, and stating that I am proceeding with the fence under that provision. He also tells me to request a hearing if they want to dispute it. I draft the letter that afternoon, print it, and send it certified mail to the HOA management company and to Cynthia's address, which is listed in the neighborhood directory. Then I go back outside and help Marco finish setting the rest of the posts. By the end of the week, we have all the posts in and the rails up. The fence is about 60% done, and it looks good. Marco is pleased. We are on schedule, and the city inspector signed off on the framing. I am starting to feel like maybe I can get through this without losing my mind. Then I get a letter from a law firm in Grand Rapids. It is on thick paper with a gold embossed logo, and the first line says we represent the Clearbrook Landing Association in the matter of covenant enforcement. My stomach drops. The letter says I am in violation of multiple covenant sections, that I have ignored repeated notices, and that the association is prepared to seek an emergency injunction to halt construction and impose additional fines. It also says I have 7 days to respond or the association will file in circuit court. I read the letter 3 times, and then I call David. He is not surprised. They are trying to scare you. It is a standard move. You respond with your own letter, you cite the default approval rule, and you make it clear that you are willing to go to court if they push it. Do you have a lawyer? I tell him no. He gives me the name of a guy in Grand Rapids who handles HOA disputes, a solo practitioner named Greg Mallory. I call Greg that afternoon. He listens to my story, asks for copies of all the documents, and tells me his retainer is $1,500. I do not have $1,500 sitting around, but I also do not have a choice. I agree, and he says he will draft a response letter by Monday. Over the weekend, I walk around the neighborhood and try to meet some people. I knock on a few doors, introduce myself, and mention that I am dealing with some HOA issues. Most people are polite but not interested. One guy, a retired engineer named Paul, who lives 3 houses down, invites me in for coffee. He is older, maybe mid-60s, with wireframe glasses and a dry sense of humor. He listens to my story and nods. Cynthia is a nightmare. She has been on the board for 4 years, and she treats the covenants like a personal weapon. I have seen her fine people for leaving a trash can out 10 minutes past pickup, for planting the wrong color flowers, for parking a car in their own driveway overnight. She is the reason half the neighborhood does not go to meetings anymore. I ask him if anyone has ever fought back. He shrugs. A few people tried. Most of them just paid the fines and moved on. One couple sold their house and moved. I ask him if he would be willing to come to the next board meeting and speak on my behalf. He thinks about it, then nods. Sure, I have nothing to lose. I am already on her list. The board meeting is scheduled for the following Thursday at 7 in the evening, in the clubhouse at the front of the neighborhood. I arrive 10 minutes early with a folder full of printed documents, the covenant sections, the meeting minutes, the timeline, the violation notices, the email chain with Angela, and the certified mail receipts. Paul is already there, sitting in the back row. There are about 15 people in the room, most of them board members or HOA officers. Cynthia is at the front table with a laptop, a stack of binders, and her portable thermal printer. She is wearing a white windbreaker and her pink sun hat even though we are indoors, and she does not look at me when I walk in. The meeting starts with routine business, budget updates, landscaping contracts, pool maintenance. I sit through 20 minutes of reports before the agenda gets to new business. The board president, a man named Richard who looks like he would rather be anywhere else, reads from a note card. We have a covenant enforcement matter regarding a fence violation at Lot 47. Cynthia, can you present the details? Cynthia stands up and opens one of her binders. She does not look at me. She looks at the board. The homeowner at Lot 47 submitted a fence application on March 3rd. The application was reviewed by the Architectural Committee and denied on March 18th due to insufficient documentation. The homeowner proceeded with construction despite the denial and has ignored multiple violation notices. The association has incurred costs for independent surveying and legal consultation. We are requesting board approval to proceed with an injunction and to assess accumulated fines totaling $3,200. $3,200. The room is silent. I stand up. I would like to respond. Richard nods. Go ahead. I walk to the front and set my folder on the table. I submitted my fence application 14 business days ago. The covenant allows 15 business days for committee review. If the committee does not respond in that time, the application is deemed approved by default. I have the covenant section right here. I pull out the printed page and hand it to Richard. He reads it, frowns, and passes it to the board member next to him. Cynthia interrupts. That provision does not apply when the application is incomplete. I turn to her. My application included a surveyor's plot map, a materials list, and scaled drawings. What was incomplete? She does not answer. Richard looks at her. Cynthia, do we have documentation of what was missing? She flips through her binder. The committee determined that additional setback verification was needed. Richard frowns. Did we notify the homeowner of that before denying the application? Cynthia hesitates. We sent a denial email. Richard looks at me. Did the email specify what was missing? I shake my head. It just said insufficient documentation and told me to resubmit. I have the email here. I pull it out and hand it to Richard. He reads it, and his frown deepens. One of the other board members, a woman in her 50s, speaks up. If the application was incomplete, we should have given him a chance to correct it before denying it outright. Cynthia cuts in. He did not wait for approval. He started construction while the application was under review. That is the violation. I take a breath. I started construction after the 15-day default approval window passed. I followed the covenant. Cynthia shakes her head. The board amended the review timeline to 21 days last month. I look at Richard. Can I see the amendment? Where is the recorded vote? Richard looks at Cynthia. Did we vote on that? Cynthia nods. It was part of the March meeting. Richard pulls out his own laptop and opens a file. He scrolls for a minute, then looks up. I do not see a vote on timeline changes in the March minutes. Cynthia leans over and points at his screen. It is in the Architectural Committee discussion section. Richard reads it, then shakes his head. That is a discussion note, not a vote. If we were changing the timeline, we would need a formal amendment and a notice to homeowners. Cynthia's face goes tight, and she does not say anything. Paul stands up from the back row. I would like to add something. Richard nods. Go ahead. Paul walks to the front. I have lived in this neighborhood for 12 years, and I have watched Cynthia use the covenant as a personal enforcement tool for the last 4. She fines people for minor infractions that no one else would care about, and she does it without following the procedures in the covenant. This fence situation is a perfect example. The homeowner followed the rules, and she is punishing him for it. Cynthia glares at Paul. I do not need a lecture from someone who has never served on the board. Paul shrugs. Maybe you need a lecture from someone who actually reads the covenant. The room is quiet again, and I see a few people nodding. Richard clears his throat. I think we need to table this matter and review the covenant procedures before we proceed with any fines or legal action. Cynthia slams her binder shut. We already have a legal opinion that supports enforcement. Richard looks at her. From who? She does not answer right away, and Richard repeats the question. From who, Cynthia? She pulls a piece of paper out of her binder and hands it to him. It is a 1-page letter from the law firm that sent me the injunction threat. Richard reads it, and his expression changes. This is not a legal opinion. This is a retainer agreement. Cynthia, did you hire a lawyer without board approval? Cynthia crosses her arms. The covenant allows the board secretary to retain counsel for enforcement matters. Richard shakes his head. Not without a vote. You know that. Cynthia does not respond, and the room feels like it is holding its breath. Richard looks at me. I am sorry for the confusion. We are going to review this internally and get back to you within a week. In the meantime, I am suspending all fines related to this matter. Cynthia starts to object, but Richard cuts her off. That is my decision as board president. Meeting adjourned. He closes his laptop, and people start filing out. I stay in my seat, and Paul walks over. That was something. I nod, and I feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Cynthia packs up her binders and walks out without looking at anyone. I watch her go, and I know this is not over. The next morning, I get an email from Richard. He apologizes for the meeting and says the board is going to conduct an internal audit of Cynthia's enforcement actions over the past 6 months. He also says my fence is approved under the default provision, and I can proceed with construction. I forward the email to Marco, and he calls me 10 minutes later. We are good to finish? I tell him yes. He laughs. Finally. Some sanity. We schedule the final phase for the following Monday, and I spend the weekend organizing my documents and preparing for whatever Cynthia does next. Monday morning, Marco shows up with the rest of the fence panels and the gate hardware. We work through the day, and by late afternoon, the fence is almost done. We are installing the gate when Cynthia pulls up in her car. She gets out, holding her clipboard with the clear rain cover and her laser measuring tool. She walks up to the fence, aims the laser at the top rail, and makes a note. Your fence is 6.3 feet tall. The covenant allows a maximum of 6 feet. I stop what I am doing and walk over to her. The covenant says 6 feet for privacy fences in the backyard. This is a side yard fence, and the maximum is 6.5 feet. I have it right here. I pull out my phone and show her the covenant section. She does not look at it. The architectural committee measures all fences at the highest point. Your fence exceeds 6 feet. I point at the laser tool. You are measuring at the post cap. The rail height is exactly 6 feet. She shakes her head. The post cap is part of the structure. I take a breath. You are inventing rules. She smiles, and it is the same cold smile from the first day. I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says. I pull out my phone and call Richard. He answers on the third ring, and I explain what is happening. He sighs. Put her on the phone. I hand the phone to Cynthia. She listens for about 10 seconds, and her face goes red. She hands the phone back to me without saying a word, gets in her car, and drives away. Richard is still on the line. I told her to stand down. If she contacts you again, let me know immediately. I thank him and hang up. Marco is grinning. Man, that was beautiful. I laugh, and we finish installing the gate. The fence is done by Tuesday evening. It looks great, and Marco is proud of it. He takes a few photos for his portfolio, and I pay him the final balance. He shakes my hand. Good luck with the HOA. You are going to need it. I thank him, and he drives away. I stand in my yard and look at the fence, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I feel like I won something. That night, I get an email from David. He has been following the situation, and he tells me to request the board meeting minutes from March as soon as they are finalized. If Cynthia edited anything after the meeting, that is a serious governance violation. I reply and ask him how I would even know if she edited them. He says to compare the draft minutes to the final version. If the board secretary publishes final minutes that are different from what was discussed, someone will notice. I make a note to follow up on that. 2 days later, I get a notification from the HOA portal that the March meeting minutes have been posted. I log in and download the file. It is dated April 10th, which is today. I open it and read through the architectural committee section. There is a new sentence that was not in the draft version I saw 2 weeks ago. The committee voted to extend the fence application review period to 21 business days to allow for comprehensive evaluation. I stare at the screen. I know that sentence was not in the draft. I open my email and search for the screenshot I sent to David. I find it and compare it line by line. The draft minutes said the committee discussed extending the review period. The final minutes say the committee voted to extend it. That is not a typo. That is a fabrication. I call David. He answers, and I explain what I found. He is quiet for a second. That is fraud. If she added a vote that did not happen, that is falsifying corporate records. You need to get the original draft and prove it was changed. I ask him how I do that. He says the HOA management company should have a copy of the draft that was submitted before the board secretary finalized it. Request it in writing, and if they refuse, you have grounds to escalate. I draft an email to Angela at Ridgeway Property Group. I explain that I have reason to believe the March meeting minutes were altered after publication, and I am requesting a copy of the original draft that was submitted to the board for review. I send it and wait. Angela replies the next morning. I do not have access to draft minutes. The board secretary is responsible for finalizing and publishing meeting records. If you have concerns about the accuracy of the minutes, you can raise them at the next board meeting. I reply again. I am not asking for your access. I am asking for the file that was sent to the board for review before the final version was published. Angela does not respond. I forward the email chain to David, and he tells me to escalate to the management company's legal department. I do not know if they have a legal department, but I draft another email and send it to the general contact address with a subject line that says formal records request. I attach the screenshot of the draft minutes and the link to the final minutes, and I ask for an explanation of the discrepancy. 2 hours later, I get a phone call from a man who introduces himself as the compliance director for Ridgeway Property Group. His name is Tom, and he sounds annoyed. I understand you have concerns about meeting minutes. I tell him yes, and I walk him through the evidence. He is quiet for a long time. Then he asks me to send him the screenshots. I email them while we are on the phone, and he opens them. I can see the difference, he says. This is a problem. I ask him what happens next. He says he will open an internal review and notify the board president. If the minutes were altered, the board secretary will be required to issue a correction and explain the change. I thank him and hang up, and I feel a small spark of hope. The next board meeting is scheduled for the first Thursday in May. I mark it on my calendar and I start preparing. I print out everything: the email chains, the screenshots, the violation notices, the timeline, the covenant sections, the certified mail receipts. I organize it all into a tabbed binder, the same kind Cynthia uses because I want her to see that I am playing her game. Paul agrees to come with me again, and he brings a neighbor named Lisa, who has her own Cynthia horror story about a mailbox placement fine. We arrive early, and the clubhouse is more crowded than last time. Word has gotten around. Richard opens the meeting, and the first item on the agenda is a report from Tom at Ridgeway Property Group. Tom is on speakerphone, and his voice fills the room. After reviewing the March meeting minutes, we have determined that the final published version contains language that was not present in the draft submitted for board review. Specifically, a sentence describing a vote on fence application timelines was added after the fact. This constitutes a material alteration of the official record. The room goes silent. Cynthia is sitting at the front table, and her face is blank. Richard looks at her. "Cynthia, do you want to respond?" She shakes her head. I finalize the minutes based on my notes. Richard frowns. "Your notes included a vote that did not happen?" Cynthia does not answer. Tom continues. The board secretary is required to publish minutes that accurately reflect the meeting. Adding a vote that was not conducted is a violation of the association's bylaws and Michigan nonprofit corporation law. We recommend that the board issue a formal correction and consider whether the secretary's role should be reevaluated. Richard takes a breath. I move that we issue a correction to the March minutes and remove the sentence referencing a vote that did not occur. Do I have a second? One of the other board members raises her hand. All in favor? 4 hands go up. Cynthia does not vote. The motion passes. Richard looks at Cynthia again. We also need to discuss your role as secretary. Cynthia stands up. I resign. She picks up her binders, her laptop, and her portable thermal printer, and she walks out of the room. No one stops her. The door closes, and the room is silent for a long moment. Then Paul starts clapping, and a few other people join in. Richard raises his hand. Let us stay focused. We still have business to cover. The meeting continues, but I am not really listening anymore. I am thinking about the moment Cynthia's face changed when Tom said the word fraud. I am thinking about the way she packed up her things like she had been expecting this. I am thinking about how many other people she did this to before someone finally caught her. After the meeting, Richard pulls me aside. I want to apologize on behalf of the board. Cynthia was acting outside her authority, and we should have caught it sooner. Your fines are being reversed, and we are going to refund everyone who was hit in the same enforcement wave. I ask him how many people that is. He shakes his head. At least a dozen. Maybe more. We are still going through the records. I thank him, and I walk out into the parking lot. Paul is waiting by his car. You did good, he says. I shrug. I just did not want to pay $3,000 in fake fines. He laughs. Well, you saved a lot of other people too. That counts for something. A week later, I get a check in the mail from the HOA for $200, which is the total amount of the fines I actually paid before the board suspended them. There is also a letter from Richard explaining that the architectural committee has revised its procedures and that all fence applications will now be processed within 10 business days unless additional documentation is requested in writing. I read the letter twice, and then I file it in my binder. The following month, I get an email from Tom at Ridgeway Property Group. He tells me that the board held an emergency meeting and voted to terminate the vendor relationship with the independent surveyor that Cynthia hired, because the surveyor was billing the HOA for services that were not authorized by the board. He also tells me that Cynthia is no longer involved with the association in any capacity. I reply and thank him for the update, and I ask if there will be any further investigation. He says the board decided not to pursue legal action, but they are implementing new oversight procedures for the secretary role. I do not love that answer, but I understand it. HOAs do not like publicity, and this kind of scandal could hurt property values. A few weeks later, I run into Lisa at the neighborhood pool. She tells me that she got a refund check too, and that 3 other board members resigned after the Cynthia situation because they did not want to deal with the fallout. The board is holding elections next month, and Paul is running for a seat. I tell her I will vote for him, and she laughs. You should run too. We need people who actually read the covenants. I think about it, but I decide I have had enough HOA drama for a while. Maybe next year. One afternoon in late May, I am working in my yard when a car pulls up in front of my house. It is a sedan I do not recognize, and a woman gets out holding a folder. She walks up to my driveway, and I see that it is Cynthia. My stomach tightens, but I do not move. She stops about 10 feet away and holds up the folder. I wanted to drop this off. It is the original surveyor report from your fence application. I never submitted it to the committee. I walk over and take the folder. Inside is a 2-page report with photos, measurements, and a certification stamp. The report says the fence placement is compliant with the setback requirements and recommends approval. I look at her. Why are you giving this to me now? She does not answer right away. Then she says, because I was wrong. She turns and walks back to her car, and I stand there holding the folder and watching her drive away. I take the folder inside and add it to my binder. I do not know what to do with it. Part of me wants to send it to Richard or Tom, but another part of me thinks it does not matter anymore. Cynthia is gone. The fines are reversed. The fence is done. I won. But I also know that she is still out there, and she is probably going to find another neighborhood, another board, another set of covenants to weaponize. That is just how some people are. A few days later, I am at a coffee shop in Grand Rapids when I run into Greg Mallory, the lawyer I hired. He asks me how everything turned out, and I give him the short version. He nods. You got lucky. Most HOA cases drag on for months, and people end up settling just to make it stop. I tell him I had good evidence and a management company that actually cared about the rules. He laughs. That is the key. If the management company is in bed with the board, you are screwed. I finish my coffee and we shake hands. He tells me to call him if I ever need help again, and I say I hope I do not. The fence has been up for 2 months now, and it still looks great. Marco did solid work, and I have gotten compliments from a few neighbors. The HOA has not contacted me about anything since the board meeting, and I check the portal every week just to make sure there are no surprise notices. So far, nothing. Paul won his board seat in the election, and he sends me updates every few weeks. The new board is focused on transparency and process, and they are reviewing all of Cynthia's enforcement actions from the past year to see if there are any other fabricated violations. I wish them luck. One evening in early June, I am sitting on my back porch when my phone buzzes. It is a text from David. Just saw an article in the Grand Rapids Legal Newsletter about HOA governance reforms. Your case got mentioned. I open the link he sends, and there is a 2-paragraph summary about an unnamed association in Grand Rapids that discovered falsified meeting minutes and implemented new oversight procedures. It does not mention Clearbrook Landing by name, but I know it is us. I screenshot the article and send it to Paul. He replies with a thumbs up emoji and the words, "We are famous." I think about Cynthia sometimes. I wonder if she learned anything from this, or if she just moved on to the next fight. I think about the moment at the board meeting when her own quote played back against her, when Richard read her email about making it a lean conversation, and the room realized how far she was willing to go. That was the turning point. That was when the board saw her for what she was. I did not raise my voice, because my proof was louder than any argument. I held on to that the whole time, and it worked. A few weeks later, I am at the hardware store picking up some stain for the fence when I see Cynthia in the garden section. She is holding a bag of mulch and looking at plant markers. I almost turn around and leave, but then I decide I am not going to hide. I walk past her aisle, and she sees me. We make eye contact for about 2 seconds, and then she looks away and keeps shopping. I do not say anything. Neither does she. I pay for my stain and leave, and I do not think about her again. By the end of June, the HOA has issued refunds to 14 homeowners who were fined under Cynthia's enforcement actions. The total amount is over $8,000, and the board sends a letter to the entire neighborhood explaining what happened and apologizing for the breakdown in oversight. Paul tells me that the letter was his idea and that it was the right thing to do. I agree. Transparency matters, especially in an HOA where people feel powerless. I finished staining the fence in early July, and it looks even better. The wood has a rich, warm tone, and it blends perfectly with the rest of the yard. I take a photo and send it to Marco, and he replies with a fire emoji and the words, "That is what I am talking about." I smile and put my phone away, and I stand in my yard and look at the fence that almost cost me $3,000 and my sanity. It was worth the fight. One Saturday morning in late July, I am mowing the lawn when Paul walks over with a folder. He is grinning. "You are going to want to see this." I turn off the mower, and he hands me the folder. Inside is a copy of the revised HOA architectural guidelines, and there is a new section on enforcement procedures. It includes language about documentation requirements, timelines, and homeowner rights. It also includes a clause that says any fines issued without proper notice or board approval are automatically void. I look at Paul. "This is good." He nods. "This is because of you." The board rewrote the whole enforcement section after the Cynthia situation. "You changed the rules." I do not know what to say, so I just shake his hand. He laughs. "Now you have to run for the board." I shake my head. "One fight was enough." He shrugs. "Fair enough. But if you change your mind, let me know. We need more people like you." The summer passes without any more HOA drama. I work my roots, I take care of my yard, and I enjoy the fence. In late August, I get an email from Richard. He tells me that the board voted to cancel the vendor relationship with the law firm that Cynthia hired without authorization, and that the association is switching to a new management company that specializes in transparent governance. He also tells me that the board is implementing quarterly audits of all enforcement actions to prevent future abuses. I reply and thank him for the update, and I tell him that I appreciate the board's efforts to fix the system. He replies with a simple "You are welcome," and I close my laptop. One evening in early September, I am sitting on my back porch with a beer when my phone rings. It is a number I do not recognize, but I answer it anyway. It is a woman who introduces herself as a reporter for a local news website. She tells me she is working on a story about HOA governance issues in West Michigan, and she heard about the situation at Clearbrook Landing. She asks if I would be willing to talk to her on the record. I think about it for a second, and then I say yes. We schedule a phone interview for the next day, and I spend the evening organizing my notes. The interview lasts about 30 minutes. The reporter asks me about the fence, the fines, the falsified minutes, and the board's response. I walk her through the timeline and I explain how the system failed and how it was eventually fixed. She asks me if I think other HOAs have similar problems, and I tell her yes. I tell her that HOAs have too much power and too little oversight, and that homeowners need to pay attention to what their boards are doing. She thanks me for my time, and she says the story will be published in a few days. The story comes out the following week. It is titled HOA Board Secretary Resigns After Falsifying Meeting Minutes in Grand Rapids Neighborhood. The article includes quotes from me, from Paul, and from Tom at Ridgeway Property Group. It also includes a statement from Richard saying that the board is committed to transparency and accountability. The story gets shared on social media, and I start getting messages from people in other neighborhoods who have their own HOA horror stories. I reply to a few of them with advice, and I realize that this fight was bigger than just my fence. It was about standing up to a system that punishes people for following the rules. In October, I get a letter from the new management company. It is a welcome packet with updated contact information, a revised fee schedule, and a copy of the new architectural guidelines. There is also a note from the new property manager, a woman named Karen, which is ironic. The note says that the company is committed to fair and transparent enforcement, and that homeowners are encouraged to reach out with questions or concerns. I file the letter in my binder, and I feel a sense of closure. Paul stops by one afternoon in late October with a bottle of whiskey. He tells me that the board just approved the final audit report, and that Cynthia's enforcement actions resulted in over $12,000 in improper fines. The board is issuing additional refunds, and they are sending a second apology letter to the neighborhood. Paul pours 2 glasses, and we sit on my back porch and toast to the end of the Cynthia era. He tells me that the new board is working well, and that the neighborhood feels different now. People are more engaged, and there is less fear. I tell him that is what accountability looks like, and he nods. In November, I run into Lisa at the grocery store. She tells me that she is running for the board in the next election, and that she wants to focus on enforcement reform. I tell her she has my vote, and she laughs. You should run too. We could use someone with your experience. I tell her maybe someday, but not yet. She shrugs. The offer stands. We talk for a few more minutes, and then she heads to the checkout line. I watch her go, and I think about how one fight can change a whole neighborhood. By December, the fence has been up for 9 months, and it still looks great. I have had 0 issues with the HOA since the board meeting in May, and I check the portal less and less. Life feels normal again, and I realize that normal is underrated. I spend the holidays with family, and I do not think about Cynthia or the fines or the fake meeting minutes. I think about the fence, and how it was worth every hour of stress and every dollar of legal fees. I think about the people who got their money back, and the neighbors who are now paying attention to what the board does. I think about Paul winning his seat, and Lisa running in the next election, and the new management company that actually follows the rules. One evening in early January, I am sitting on my couch when my phone buzzes. It is a text from David. He tells me that he just got a call from a client in another HOA who is dealing with a similar situation, and he gave them my number as a reference. He asks if I am okay with that. I reply and tell him yes, and I add that I am happy to help. A few minutes later, my phone rings. It is a man named Chris who lives in a neighborhood on the other side of Grand Rapids. He tells me his story, and it sounds almost identical to mine. Fake fines, fabricated violations, a board secretary who rewrites the rules. I listen, and then I tell him what I did. I tell him to document everything, to request the meeting minutes, to compare the drafts to the finals, and to get a lawyer if the board does not back down. He thanks me, and he says he feels less alone now. I tell him he is not alone, and that these fights are winnable if you stick to the facts. In February, I get an email from Chris. He tells me that his board held an emergency meeting, that the secretary resigned, and that the fines were reversed. He thanks me for the advice, and he says he could not have done it without my help. I reply and tell him that he did the work, not me. But I am glad it worked out. He sends me a photo of his new fence, and it looks good. I save the photo and I add it to a folder on my laptop labeled HOA Wins. It is a small folder, but it is growing. By March, the neighborhood has moved on. Cynthia is gone, the board is functioning, and people are back to worrying about normal things like snow removal and landscaping contracts. I am back to my normal work schedule, installing fiber equipment and meeting deadlines. The fence is still standing, and it still looks great. I have not thought about tape measures or string lines or portable thermal printers in months, and that feels like a victory. One Saturday in late March, I am cleaning out my garage when I find the old folder with all the HOA documents. I flip through it one last time, and I see the violation notices, the email chains, the screenshots of the falsified minutes, and the certified mail receipts. I think about throwing it all away, but then I decide to keep it. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me that I stood up for myself and won. It reminds me that the rules can bite back if you know how to use them. I close the folder and put it back on the shelf, and I walk outside to look at the fence one more time. It is a good fence. It is the fence I wanted, built the way I wanted, and it did not cost me $3,000 in fake fines. It cost me time, stress, and a lawyer's retainer. But it was worth it. Because in the end, I did not raise my voice. My proof was louder than any argument. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.